All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Dorsey's Resource. The topic of this video is going to be question and answer on redemption-related topics. See if I can get better lighting in here. But first, as usual, before I normally get started, I like to give a disclaimer. This video is going to be for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. Please understand everyone's individual circumstance or situation may be different. It's up to every individual competent person to please do his or her homework and research regarding the matter being discussed. This information is not to be construed as legal advice. In the event you feel you need to seek a competent professional, it is encouraged you do so at one's own leisure. Dorsey's Resource is not liable or responsible for any misuse of this information. Please keep in mind, everyone is responsible for their own commercial affairs. With that being said, all rights are reserved. Now, not sure how many people we're going to get. What I may do, I just wanted to let you guys know, for my subscribers out there, I'm still here. I'm actually still learning how to use the message system on YouTube. By the way, I had done it once before, but I noticed YouTube has got a lot of changes that's consistent. They've updated their creator studio for content creators, by the way. So I'm just doing this video to let you guys know from my previous video. I know it has been a while. I did intend to go dark for some time, but I just want to give an update based on how many people we get in this particular video. May be contingent upon if I do decide to delete this. And I've been working on some more content, quality content in regards to redemption related material. But like I said, I come before you guys a lot. I know a lot of times at night. I just to give you guys a heads up out there. Some of you all who know me personally already know my personal situation. By the way, I don't try to hide that, but I work six days a week at and I was doing 2 jobs up until March. By the way, the other company I was working for, they actually contacted me recently, and I said, well, during this pandemic situation, I can really only just deal with just the one right now, by the way, because of the nature of the circumstances. You guys obviously know it's put like a damper. And if you, when just taking care of regular business, you waiting in long lines at stores, and just to do simple transactions like going to the bank. By the way, there's long lines even with that. May depend on who you bank with, by the way. So so far, it's no one in here. Said, wow. I do know it is a Saturday night. By the way, I notice a lot of people do go live during the day, Sunday. So like I said, this is for my subscribers. I may decide to delete this video. Depends on how many people we get in the chat, but I'm just letting you guys know I'm still here. But with that being said, I'm going to go over some general information I have as a recap for those of you all out there who and I want to give a big shout out to you all who follow me, who continue to follow my work. I do want to let you guys know as well that I've mentioned this before previously. My channel has been censored. Maybe not as bad as some other people, but they did change the algorithms. I did hear out there. I'm not sure if there's going to be a massive change down the road. That's what I've heard allegedly for people out there who have been targeted, by the way, or some people say blacklisted. There's evidence. I did have subscribers that came to me and told me this, by the way. I see we have our first person in the chat. Styles Davis says, Peace King, appreciate the compliment. Thank you, sir, for joining. Appreciate you very much. Thank you for that compliment there. And you know, so I just want to let you guys know the censorship I notice is ramped up. It's like up to 5.0. So it's getting to the point when I look at my viewership and I have more subscribers. I was just looking at an old screen capture that I did some time ago from a video that I removed. And my channel is monetized, by the way, with the Google AdSense, but that came with the channel. A good friend of mine told me years ago, I tried to pander to you guys. I was looking at some time a while ago opening up a Patreon account. By the way, those who were serious, if I was getting ready to take things to the next level, and I'll kind of keep you guys posted if that ever comes about. But for the time being, I put that on hold. That's basically been stationary as I'm continuing my education within the redemption movement. By the way, I just want to let you all know out there that do still follow my work. I do appreciate you, those who still currently am subscribed to me, to Dorsey's Resource. I do still stay abreast and try to get updated information. I also try to network with people who are like-minded, who are serious about getting to the next level. Those of us who are at an advanced stage in this process. And I've mentioned in the past, I'm at a certain level in this. I'm definitely not a newbie or beginner. I do have years of experience. There's some reasons why I don't go over all of the success that I've had. I probably would have to put a list together, but I have seen success and things that have worked. But I also have warned people that I've met. I've cautioned them like the do's and don'ts and what to watch out for, or what roadblocks or obstacles that are placed in the way that you may not want to go through, that I've been through already, or others that I've heard. So I do try to stay abreast and warn you all of that. But if you're on the fence about this information dealing with the straw man, it is real. The proper legal term is in lingus. You're doing business as, that's in the court system. You can look up the definition of the vocabulary of the term in lingus. I did a previous video, maybe a couple, where I went over key definitions. They play an important role once you read and research this type of information. That legal person, also referred to as a legal fiction, and lingus within the court system, holds many different positions. And the contract was created when you were born. Many of us who, of course, hold a birth certificate, which is also aka a warehouse receipt. A good friend of mine even stated to me that he did recognize some years ago, when I brought this to his attention, that he noticed on there it said American Banknote Company, by the way, and that was pointed out in some other examples out there, how it stated American Banknote Company. I also have a confirmed source that told me he had looked at a gentleman's birth certificate some years ago who used to attend classes that I used to attend, by the way, and stated that this particular individual, he noticed the lower part of his long form birth certificate had Department of Commerce on there. By the way, those of y'all who are familiar with the process, after the hospital turns it over to the Department of Vital Statistics. I see greetings. Mary Saunders says, morning, sir. Good morning. Greetings to you, Mary. Thank you for joining. So after the hospital turns it over to the Department of Vital Statistics, from there I hear the doctor has X amount of days to get that turned over. I've even spoke to a couple not too long ago that was in the process that had a baby, and stated to me how it was like they felt like they were being rushed by the hospital because they knew about this type of information, and they were trying to decide if you know, how they were going to go about you know, when you're of course new. And kudos to the individual. I won't say his name. He appeared to be advanced even for a newbie, by the way. But I did get his concern. The hospitals have a certain time period to turn that over. So Vital Statistics is the registrar connected to the state registrar's office. And at you have a lower level like Department of Health locally, then it goes in many states to your state is like at a higher level, by the way. So there's a process, and I learned recently from these classes, advanced classes that I was taking recently that were private, and kudos to the individual south of me that invited me to these classes. Big shout out to him and the work that he's done throughout the years, by the way, and many others who have shared information, including a subscriber that I do know personally, and many others out there. I do appreciate the work that you're doing behind the scenes. We do need to help each other out. That's how we can become more advanced in the movement, the way that we privately relay information and share information. There's people who work in many different professions and fields, And it is good to not necessarily let everyone know what you're into, but those that you do know who study this type of information, which there are individuals out there that try to discredit it, the legitimate side of redemption education. I don't refer or use that term sovereign citizen. Be careful, very leery if you hear anyone mention that term, that be watchful that they're an agent, a gatekeeper, and they may not have good intentions. Some people just don't know, by the way, but there's not too many people, not anyone I personally met in the movement since I've been studying this type of information in 2004, which I did a video about previously, is unconventional. I delve into that, the reasons why, and the reasons individuals will try to discredit this information from being legitimate. There is a legitimate side, and that's what I try to focus on. And as coming out as a whistleblower in a way, and as an insider, I can substantiate the claims that I'm presenting, and even expose some of the misinformation, disinfo agents out there, bad actors, gatekeepers, and villains who try to attempt to discredit this type of information completely and just say it's all lies. No, there's legitimacy to this information. So going back to the N Lingus, you're doing business as the decedent estate, by the way, it holds many different positions. I found out from the private classes I was listening to recently. It's also a sole proprietorship, by the way. The individual was phenomenal, way he was breaking down the terms, and I could tell even with the experience that I have at the level that I'm at. So it's a sole proprietorship. It's an estate, which is obvious in many cases, believe it or not, behind the scenes. You've seen when famous people have passed away, they've referred to their estate. So the process started, the original contract with our parents, who turned us over as wardens of the state with the birth certificate. But going back to the story earlier, as I almost forgot, I did have confirmation once again. If a good friend of mine did see someone he knows that had Department of Commerce on this person's birth certificate, and he's an older person. I know he just wouldn't make this up to me, by the way, because people ask me the credibility, the validity, and still even going by his word, he's told me that story repeated times, and I could ask him again, and he likes to break it down, and because I was curious myself, just to get validity. And I will try to work on interviewing people who are willing to go public. Just let me know. Maybe we can down the road, when I get better acclimated with the softwares out there, if anybody knows any good software that's good, if we could arrange a Skype meetup. I do have access to Skype, even though I don't log in as much, and I have Zoom, by the way. So those of y'all who are interested in those types of things, if you are a whistleblower or would like to do an interview to expose, or if you would like to interview myself, feel free. You can contact me at Dorsey's Resource 2017 at gmail.com. That's Dorsey's Resource, how I have it spelled on this account, 2017 at gmail.com. That is my main email for inquiry, specifically for this channel, by the way. And I do evaluate and assess the inquiries that I receive, because I have mentioned in the past there are trolls and gatekeepers out there, by the way. So I'm going to see if there's any questions, by the way. I see Darren Jackson says ready for class. He chimed in at 3 a.m. Appreciate you, Darren. Appreciate you for joining. Mary Saunders says, what really is the stimulus monies for? Will it cost the taxpayers in the long run? That's a good question, by the way, Mary. In my opinion, by the way, and I know I touched my face. I do have hand sanitizer for those who are trying to follow the social distancing thing and all of that, which is tied in with the stimulus, by the way. I would say, in my opinion, there's a lot of information online already. By the way, there's a lot of YouTubers. I did see someone posted a copy of the bill that the legislators worked on, and some people were stating that you're going to have to pay that money back to the IRS. This gets into tax advice, and I want to tell you these are my opinions. I did give a disclaimer, so this is not legal, financial, or tax advice. But however, in my opinion, I would recommend that you do the research. There are content creators who have shared information in relation to that check that's supposed to come in based on what the requirements are. There's a lot of resources from your local news. I did hear recently that you don't have to pay the money back. I'm not sure. You know, it's one of these things. Can we trust the Internal Revenue Service? It's a question which is involved with the Treasury. I did listen to the Secretary of Treasury, Steven Mnuchin, say not too long ago. Of course, obviously, I did give my opinion prior about this whole pandemic situation, which I think would touch on a whole nother topic within itself. And speaking in code, I trust the plan. By the way, those of y'all who do know what that means, I'm speaking in code, so I won't really delve into that. That's why I put in this particular Q&A redemption related questions, but that is fine. Get back to the question. That was a good question, Mary. Will it cost taxpayers in the long run? It could possibly. And those who are still public, by the way, those who are still operating on the statutory public sector side, best believe there is a private sector too, by the way. And I did hear there's some things changing, which I was following another content creator, which I won't get into, by the way. Some of you all may already know, but I hear some things maybe taking place with the IRS and the Treasury, by the way, and some things already have, by the way. I was even informed a year ago about a particular bill, a resolution that was already passed. So there's some things that are being implemented. But however, if you still do have obligations, I encourage you to settle those obligations. As they say, render unto Caesar what is due. So, you know, you're not putting yourself in harm's way, by the way, as if you would do attempt to especially use this information if you don't fully understand about the private sector and how to operate, just as a caution. But I've heard two sides. Some people say you have to pay that money back. Or some people say it's going to be a voucher with the IRS. I do recommend, if you don't have a background in finance, then I encourage you to do the research if you really want to know, because I do think there's a lot of good information out there on the public side, CPAs, and then just content creators, and you can compare notes. But at the end of the day, we don't know, or do we know, what the Treasury or the IRS is going to decide to do when it comes to taxes, how they calculate whether people owe and whatnot. If you've been through the process before for filing a 1040, you know, is this going to be a credit? Is it also, I heard, is it going to be like a duplicate voucher for those who already who filed 2018, 2019? So like I said, this is not tax advice. I did give a disclaimer. This is also not financial or legal advice, but just giving my opinion to kind of thoroughly answer that question. Mary, that is a good question. I would encourage you, and those out there, there's a lot of good resources, videos on YouTube already, and also online to check, and also with the IRS's website that they're coming out with. I heard in a week the updates. By the way, I will go to irs.gov, and I heard TurboTax, which I already know, was working with them as a partner, and they had another site as well that linked you to basically filing a basic return that could allow you to receive that that particular stimulus funds if you qualify for it, and they list the qualifications for that, by the way. So I think that's really public knowledge. They've put that out there for everyone. So hopefully it appears as though it's a relief effort that you won't have to pay the money back. I heard allegedly even recently, even for non-filers, they even had a section for non-filers. So I don't know what they're going to do, you know. Like I say, at the end of the day, to thoroughly answer your question, Mary, that may be up to the IRS. I can't make that call, but that's a good question. Next person, Tyrell Poindexter, thoughts on Patrick Devine's method, by the way. I like Patrick Devine. He's helped out throughout the years. Kudos to him. I played a key role some years ago, by the way. A person, it's one of several elders that I know. When you guys hear me mention elder, I'm referring to someone in the movement who's been in this just as long as I've been, even longer than myself, who is older. Whenever you hear me say elder, but I keep their names private, their identity. So when I say that, I'm referring to even more than one person, just so you guys know. I do have contact sources, but at that level, I keep those individuals privately. If those that wonder, do I have any handlers or people behind the scenes? They're not necessarily handlers, but there's people, they even learn information from myself and even have admitted that, by the way. But one in particular, I would say is very well connected, by the way. And I helped some years ago, Patrick Devine, before I heard he passed away, allegedly. I heard he died from cancer. I don't know when, allegedly, I'm just saying, but his audios were out there. He had a Yahoo group, and there were other people who had groups as well that taught redemption education, such as Winston Strout. Years ago, you had Dr. Sam Kennedy, David Clarence still has audios out there. I've even recommended people that had questions about the black card. That video I did some years ago, I encouraged them. I had already put this out in previous videos. Look up David Clarence's information. He provides validity behind, if you're on the fence about this information, is this stuff real? Is this sovereign citizen stuff? Is this a myth? Is this, I'm not trying to spook you or nothing, but I'm giving you legitimate sources, real actual people that are out there. You had Rice McLeod some years ago. You had Kevin Hines based out of Texas. You had Gene Keating. And I kudos to these people. You had Tom Schultz some years ago, who I had a chance to meet at a Pastor Tony King seminar. And I just recently found out from UCL that Tom Schultz was an accountant. And by the way, and there was information some years ago, there were notes you used to be able to get for free, that he had a conversation with Patrick Devine that was in a document that you could pull up online. Now Scribs site, you guys familiar with Scribs? I know many of you are. Took a lot of those documents that used to be free online, and they're charging people for it, which I don't understand. I had a friend of mine that does like investigative research like myself and has skill sets in other areas. He actually looked up who owned Scribs and told me at the time, I don't know if still are, that they were owned by the Discovery Channel. So there's a connection with the Discovery Channel with Scribs. He said owns that site where, in order to retrieve those documents, some people, I guess you have to pay a fee, like with a credit card or whatever, for like a reoccurring membership. You guys are familiar with how that works, obviously, which many of those documents many years ago, I'm kind of giving you guys a history. This is where my experience comes into play. Well, I have a trained eye and I'm giving you valid information versus certain gatekeepers out there that are telling you that their facts matter. I have experience in this. And whatever names people decide to call it, I don't get into that he said, she said stuff, whether people call this secured party creditor, redemption, usufruct, or, sovereign citizen, whatever terms people use sometimes in that regard in the study of this information. It's whatever people make it out to be. But I encourage you, don't take my word for what I say. That's why I put in my disclaimer, please do your homework. I think many of you will be surprised when you check the validity behind the information that I go over. That's why I'm giving you guys the skill sets and the resources, how I've done investigative research thoroughly throughout the years to solidify the validity behind is some of this stuff real or not. But I like Patrick Devine. By the way, to answer your question, I think his information, I would go a step further. I would say I wouldn't just depend on just his information. I think throughout the years, as more people have come out and shared information, many of us together have unofficially worked as kind of like, as teams of people studying and researching the information. The technology has gotten much better, by the way, and more accurate. But I would not disregard the work that he put in throughout the years. Major kudos. I think Patrick Devine played a pivotal part, a critical role in even helping some of the people who are advanced, who are more advanced, get to the next level. And as I said years ago, I myself played a critical role because at the time I had basic computer skills that I learned from a friend. I was able to retrieve the audios from his group online before some of the audios. You may not, you had to, I think, join his Yahoo group or sign up. And I was able to share that with one of the sources that I have that's well connected with different groups around the country, by the way. You know, so I think I played a critical role in getting that information out. A lot of people may not know that. I have a friend, he had a group down south in Arkansas, by the way, and he was out in California for a while too. So you know, he shared that information. So I've been helpful, and I've worked with other groups in the movement, people that I'd never met face to face, where we just basically share information, and this assisted throughout the years. So I appreciate Patrick Devine, the work that he put in, if you're wondering what my thoughts are. Darren says, I have a question. When Donald Trump sampled national emergency, did he or did he not assign all his powers over to FEMA? Is saying he's no longer a president, yes or no? That's a good question. I did hear a little bit about that. I did hear he declared a national emergency, by the way. But however, at the same time, you have what I would say, Trump has been put in for a specific reason. If you know, I'm not sure if you know, you can chime in the chat if you're still there, if you're still listening. If you're aware of the deep state and the plan that's going on behind the scenes, he's been put in for a specific purpose. There was a video that was shared. You may have heard about it. I had a couple people that shared this with me, that there was a guy, he was a pastor, a preacher, put out information about these military generals who had were backing Trump. I think there's some legitimacy to that particular video. I looked at it, I knew some things from a different context too, but I'm going to kind of speak in code because some things I don't go into. I think there's too sensitive, but I will let you know there are stay behind networks, and to kind of give you validity behind previous administrations, not just one, but multiple ones, have been engaged in corruption, as you've seen even locally within local governments, municipalities around the country, by the way. So just like, for example, in health, when the body becomes too acidic, you need alkaline to balance the body out. You need to raise the alkaline levels. Same with the government. When the government gets out of balance, out of hand, Trump has been put in, basically, whether you love him or hate him, to clean up, drain the swamp. If you guys have heard that, some of the bad stuff that's been going on. Certain government agencies, you have mutiny that's going on, from what I hear, from listening to a radio talk show host that I follow from time to time. I haven't been able to listen to as much in the past, ever since, I'll give you a hint, he was banned off, kicked off social media, a lot of social media sites, by the way. And not just himself, there was others out there too, by the way, on a side note. A lot of people like to focus on him, but there's others out there. And to provide validity, I did hear, because there's some things, like I said, this gets into some other stuff. I've given my opinion about the pandemic, and that previous video that I put out about COVID-19, by the way, YouTube, just so you guys know, they demonetized that, not fully, but partially. And that's why I kind of went in the beginning. If you, when I started this video, while my channel has been censored, I had some subscribers that let me know a while ago, and I actually have way more subscribers when I did a screen capture video where some time ago, where I showed the amount that I used to get. And it's not really relevant with my Google AdSense payment, by the way, but I was telling a relative that asked me, they said, how much do you get? I said, it's hardly nothing anymore, because YouTube has drastically demonetized. But it shows I'm not in this for the money, you know, it just came with the channel. And like many others, I've never added a Cash App. I've never begged or pondered to you guys. I still even haven't set up the Patreon account. So I'm for the people, we the people, by the way. I wanted to, you know, expose some things in the past that was concerning to me, that I felt I needed to go public, by the way, to provide validity. So you guys see that I'm not making this up. And I appreciate the subscribers who did send me emails to let me know they had my back. And one in particular, I'll shout him out. I'll just say his first name. And he's been in some previous live discussions, in case he's watching or down the road. Terry, I appreciate you. And I've actually spoken with privately, by the way. you know, I do thank you. And just because I may not respond for a while doesn't mean I haven't saw your message, haven't read it. I do intend to get back with you as well as the military guy whose name I won't say, by the way, who contacted me. I still plan on getting you that information. But however, give me time. You can shoot me an email again, because I do try to assess between the trolls, because I say serious inquiries only. By the way, I've had, you know, trolls, gatekeepers try to sneak in through the back door. I want to let you guys know there are bad people out here. There are mean-spirited people. There are agents, people who work for the deep state. There are people who don't have good intentions. I created a whole list just so you guys know. There are bad actors they're referred to. Gatekeepers, agents, minions. There's underlinks. There's villains. There's henchmen and deep state operatives I refer to, by the way. And just be on the lookout. So to kind of help answer your question, I'm kind of speaking in code, Darren, but there's a cleanup, I believe, that's coming. There's a shakeup, but the timing is critical. It's key. But these government networks that are still they refer to as stay behind networks, they're being cleaned up. Like I heard allegedly the FBI was cleaned up, and maybe some more work. But I heard the CIA hasn't, and some other agencies, and they're working on that, by the way. And there's some things, the timing might not occur or happen exactly as sometimes what people plan, but what's coming down the road, people, I think, will really be surprised, by the way. I'm just kind of speaking in code. Some stuff I don't like to talk about or put out there, but I do have sources, people who relay information to me privately, and I appreciate that. And those out there, as I previously stated, who said they had my back, you know, because I mentioned how I went through some things, and I do monitor and track in case anybody, you know, is trying to do anything. I kind of went over this even in a previous video or whatever. I will no doubt contact law enforcement and even individuals privately if I needed protection, by the way, because some of the information I've gone over previously is dangerous, by the way, because of these underlinks, these villains, these bad actors, these henchmen out here who don't have good intentions. They really do exist. There is a global criminal syndicate. Best believe there is a global syndicate. And they mean to cause harm. They don't mean well. And we need all patriots, men, alpha males out there, alpha females. We do need you, your skills that have a sincere heart. And I recommend you evaluate, assess who the good guys versus the bad guys are. Because, you know, and that's kind of what I'll leave it at, what's going on, that the swamp, there's people in the swamp, they got to be drained, by the way, and it's got to happen. Unfortunately, you know, people out there, they don't go looking for trouble, but, you know, these people, they're not going to let up. You know, just letting you guys know before I get to the next question, you know, these bad actors out there, they are real. And, you know, something had to be done, by the way, you know, so it is for what it is. Kangaroo Jack, the next statement in the chat says, I heard that the Dawn might revalue in May 7th. Do you have any info? Just the same as before. Just stay on standby. I was told just be cautious. Here we're in the midst of that now, the things that are going on with the GCR. I'll just stay on standby, stay vigilant, stay watchful. By the way, you know, some things were shared. And, you know, like I said, too, don't get caught up necessarily in dates, because they don't want necessarily people to know dates, by the way. So sometimes I would say refrain, if you can, try to refrain from mentioning dates, by the way, because I've heard in the past, that's why they don't even want gurus or people to even talk about rates, you know, dates and rates, they kind of rhyme. I would just say, I've just kind of put it on the side, but have a backup plan. I would recommend, too, if you have the funds, the money, buy precious metals. If you can afford gold, I know gold is more expensive, by the way. Precious metals, silver, if you can, hard assets. Don't have all your eggs in one basket. Even cryptocurrencies, I was told, because the future, they're not giving us a choice. I know some people don't like them, whether you like them or not. I recommend don't put all your eggs in one basket. They say in investments, diversify your portfolio. It's important, get digital currencies, cryptos, Bitcoin, start off with that. If you just put, you don't even have to purchase the full amount. Just buy and hold it. I've heard some things. Kudos to you guys who told me about the Bitcoin time traveler when I did a video a while ago. I didn't know about that. I did look into it, by the way. And I looked into some other things as well about time travelers and stuff. I do get into the esoteric information. I don't talk about it that much because I try to deal with things that people can relate to, that can be proven. But I do like the fanboy, fangirl stuff, by the way. I think I'm subscribed to Marfugo News, David Wilcox, and other people. But I don't really talk about that type of stuff as much. But however, because it's harder to prove. And for those out there who are level-headed, down to earth, I don't get into that type of stuff, because then it would give the agents or gatekeepers an excuse to say, see, he's talking that conspiracy theory. He's a conspiracy theorist, because they want to easily discredit things and dismiss it because they don't want people to look into this type of information. Remember, that's how they control people. They want to control the narrative. So agents they'll send, sometimes they'll mix truth in with lies, by the way, to make it seem like a story checks out. But that's why I encourage you all, do in-depth research, check the validity. Don't take my word for what I'm saying. Please do your homework and research. And this is why I refrain from talking about certain topics, but I will refrain from discussing dates and rates when it comes to the GCR. I would just say we waited. Many of us have been patient long enough. Best believe it is real. I have receipts to back it up, and others that I know, stories we can tell. But I would just say, for the time being, I will refrain from rates and dates and just let things take course, by the way, because sometimes you don't want to let the bad guys know what the left hand know what the right hand is doing. You don't want to tip off, because the cabal people, they already have stolen enough money and hurt enough people. So it's time that those of us who are good deserve access to this. I'm just kind of giving a hint, wink, wink, especially those out there who mentioned if they were sincere about individuals doing humanitarian projects, it would have been nice if you were going to take the black cards away, that if they at least allow people to access full access to their secret TDA accounts, or so-called secret accounts, or if you all had done the consent application so they wouldn't be suffering as much. I'm just saying, for those out there who promised many years ago that other thing was going to come through and didn't renege, and they're like, ha, 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 and they got theirs already, and they're eating good, sleeping well at night, and children are well taken care of, but you want the rest of us to suffer. So there's individuals out there would understand if they were in my shoes, but I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to rant, you see. So I would just kind of refrain from mentioning dates and rates. I would just let things take their course, because, being a veteran at this, it's like, what can you do, So next question in the chat, we got Mary Saunders again, says, I just want a random answer. I have been researching also. Okay, yeah, that's no problem. Cool, appreciate you, Mary. No question is a stupid question at all. By the way, we have to keep that in mind. Serena Williams says, we didn't pay the stimulus back from Obama back. Okay. Like I said earlier, that's why I don't know if the IRS, based on if they're saying if people are going to have to pay that back or not. That's why I said I would just stay abreast of it, because can we trust what they're saying? By the way, we know people are hurting right now, and I would hope that even that small business package, I heard they ran out of money or funding for the small businesses, that they hopefully get that straightened out, that the Democrats and Republicans can reach an agreement on that, because people are really hurting, and especially people, I feel for them that weren't able to access the unemployment site, and I pray that gets taken care of. So next person in the chat, Tyrell Poindexter says, where can I find more info about the updated 2020 redemption technology? Okay. Good question. Excellent question. Hopefully, forgive me if I didn't pronounce your name correctly. Tyrell says, where can I find more info about the updated 2020 redemption technology? Okay, I did some videos in the past. If you go on Amazon.com, they had some pretty good books. They had an advanced book called Operating the Invisible, was like their latest book. But just prior to that, they did an updated version of a book called Operating Sovereign. They did a book called Operating Sovereign, and I would recommend that book. Depends on what level you're at. By the way, Yusuf El, by the way, has good content. This is where, since a lot of you all, some people learn well visually and audio learning. By the way, I would recommend his channel. I've referenced to in the past, Kelby Smith. His channel is called His Advocates. He goes over excellent redemption information that's related. By the way, big shout out to Hellraiser, the work that he's doing over at his channel. By the way, let me see, who else can I think of? Akeem El, by the way, go to his, subscribe to his channel. Akeem El, by the way, has good information, just basic free information out there. If you guys just study that and stay abreast, will help get you caught up in understanding the process of these things. By the way, for newbies, but I'm not sure. So to answer your question, I would also do a search online after you get some of the new material, by the way, Tyrell Poindexter. And to further answer your question, I would also look up the previous definitions if you're not familiar with the important terminology. I did a video previously. If you go back, I've done several videos. Look at the videos. I've talked about the estate. I've given hints. The name, by the way, has several different positions. Your legal person, legal fiction, which is the in lingus in the court system, by the way, is also a sole proprietorship. Let me see if I can find my other notes. You're doing business as the legal person. It's also an estate. Some refer to as the decedent estate. I've heard stories where judges years ago were trying to help people. They said when people mention straw man, because they speak a certain type of language in the court system, they use legalese, which if you look up the definition of legalese, it states it's been used to replace plain talk, plain English. But they use that to dumb down the rest of the population. And this is why lawyers and judges have an advantage over regular civilians in the population. And when we weren't taking civics, if you never took it in high school, or we didn't have it in middle school, elementary school, then it's made it more difficult. They made us illiterate in a sense because it's an entirely different language. So years ago, I was reading a story about a judge was trying to help someone who was mentioning straw man or straw person, since they had plausible deniability to not recognize the terminology that you speak, to show I've done my research on this years ago. So he said, are you referring to the decedent? Now, not all judges would do this. The judge was trying to help this individual. The story I was reading, he said, are you referring to the decedent? The person still wasn't familiar because they weren't familiar with the definitions that the straw man is also the decedent. And Title 9 of the United States Codes that deals with vessels of the United States, you're familiar with the term res. Res refers to ships. So they consider the legal person, the legal fiction, a ship. So your name is also, it's an organization, which means it holds many different positions. It's also not only a sole proprietorship. Your name is a 508 corporation sole. It's a religious organization because we're using principles that's derived from ecclesiastical law used in Roman times, Roman law. That's why you have capitis diminutio maxima. You can look it up. Capitis diminutio maxima. This was used in Roman law referring to, and this is in the rules of grammar, so which is separate from the court system. You have something called the rules of grammar. Remember how in middle school, for example, we had different classes. You had English, math, science, history, etc. And grammar referred to English class. And remember in high school, you needed 4 years of English. I would assume many all over the country, and most places I know here, you needed 4 years of English to graduate. You needed English your freshman year, sophomore, as a junior and senior year. So that was also referred to as grammar class. Sometimes in college, grammar classes are broken up into writing, but these principles are derived historically, goes back to Roman law. There's a site called, I think, VaticanAssassin.org. I would do research on that site. It had been a minute since I had went to that site. I bookmarked it. I was doing research again because capitis diminutio maxima, the definition, for example, I'm reading from some notes, by the way, so you guys know I'm not making this up. It's referring to extinguishing either in whole or in part of a person's former status and legal capacity, by the way. There were 3 changes of state or condition attended with different consequences. By the way, you have maxima, media, and minima. By the way, so capitis diminutio maxima dealt with your name in all caps. That's the straw man, the legal person, also referred to as the legal fiction in the court. The legal definition in lingus, spelled E as in Edward, N as in Nancy, S as in Sam. L as in logos, E as in Edward, G as in girl, I as in Icarus, S as in Sam, and lingus. Look it up, please. It will help provide clarification. That is the proper legal definition and legal terminology, legalese, by the way. And they can use plausible deniability. Look up what that means, by the way. So I'm going to get back to the, see if there's any more questions. See how many we have so far. Okay, I'll scroll down really quick. Ray, oh, this is, by the way, in case you guys are joining me, welcome to Dorsey's Resource. This is question and answer related to redemption material. So feel free to chime in. Those of you all who are watching, I want to thank you guys for joining. Don't forget to shoot me a thumbs up. Let's get the thumbs up out there, guys. It helps me rank higher in the search results, by the way. And also, if you aren't subscribed, please hit the notification bell. So whenever I put out new videos, YouTube will notify you, by the way. Appreciate you for hitting the thumbs up out there. So let's get the thumbs up. If you aren't subscribed, please hit the notification bell. So whenever I put out new content, YouTube will notify you and you will be maybe one of the first to join in. So whenever I do these question and answers, this is the best time to reach me, to contact me. Out of the many numerous emails that I get or social media accounts, direct messages, DMs that I get flooded with, you guys can ask me openly on here and I'll do my level best to answer your questions from my experience, by the way. So Ray O says, question, where do you see gold going? Good question, by the way, Ray. Excellent question. I did just mention gold and silver, also cryptocurrencies. I see gold is definitely it's going up there. By the way, last I checked, was it trading at around maybe 1,700 an ounce? I haven't checked it lately on coinflation.com, but I think the prices of both gold and silver are being suppressed, being manipulated. It has something to do with, if you know about the futures market, the COMEX exchange, also referred to as Mercantile Exchange out of Chicago. By the way, for people that buy the ETFs, exchange traded funds, the electronic amounts that they're not going to be able to here eventually supply the physical assets when the bubble pops, which is coming up. And then there could be laws being passed down the road where they no longer are able to, you know, keep manipulating what they're doing. Like, for example, where I heard a large bank or entity made a purchase order for over 1 billion contracts, and that would artificially pushes or suppresses the price back down somehow, from what I'm gathering. By no means am I a financial expert, but I do pay a little bit of attention to the market, by the way. So to kind of answer your question, if I know gold is more expensive, you can buy it in increments. I used to, I purchase it in ounces, but, and I don't have no problem sharing this, some of my personal business. I had surgery earlier in the year, and the 2 gold pieces that I had, one of them was a gold buffalo, 1 ounce. The other one was a St. Gaudens double eagle, something like that. You know, if you're familiar with the St. Gaudens, I think somewhere in the early 1900s. By the way, I had to sell some of those back, and that's how I came up with the money to pay for my surgery, by the way. And that's all I'll leave it at, pretty much. So at the time, those were the only 2 gold coins that I had. And I actually, from when I first purchased them, April of 2019, I had sold them back maybe sometime around December of 2019. One of them, the gold buffalo, the price had gone up by like $800. So that was the first time for price differential, because the last time I had to sell back 2 gold coins, I did to have my previous car fixed, by the way, and the price had dropped, and I had learned, I was with the guy, a friend of mine who was more advanced than myself, that had actually went up to the shop, and kudos to him. I won't say his name, of course, to protect his identity, because due to the nature of this. And I recommend, if you do hold hard assets too, make sure you have a firearm some type of security to protect them, because you have people with bad intentions. Make sure you learn as much about precious metals as you can. They have basic videos, tutorial, educational videos on YouTube, by the way, because there are people out there that don't have good intentions. I just want to reference this on a side note. This is one of the reasons why I don't talk about this as much. And certain shops have been robbed, and many of them do have armed security, by the way, or do have mechanisms to notify law enforcement if things happen, because you have marauders, by the way, and bad guys out there who don't have good intentions. And but just putting it out there, the only 2 gold coins I had, unfortunately, I had to sell them back. I mean, you have to do what you have to do. I'm still a slave on this plantation. Hopefully, I would like to get out of this one day if things had happened for me in the past. That's why I had asked if I could meet a member of the private sector who was a good, genuine person, who wasn't evil, as many, I think, in my opinion, will be willing to pull a brother out. You know, I would never forget you. You have a friend for life. Because when things happen after the fact, if I ever get access to these funds one day, God willing, I'm never going to forget what I had to go through. And I'm going to remember people who had my back very well. And I do assess people. I evaluate people that come into my life, even family members. And I recommend, you do the same. You put people on a classification, because there's a saying, you only have very few friends out there. By the way, you have friends, associates, and constituents. A friend in need is a friend indeed. True people who are true friends. You have people who are associates. They may be people you work with. You have constituents, people you might know of. So it's important to categorize people. Even do the same for family members, because even some family don't necessarily have your back, because some family members act like it's going to be all kumbaya. But I will, and just referencing to, I'll try to look out, if I do have it for my immediate family, but that's based on, one's resources. And I'd say you don't want to also be a burden on other individuals. You want to try to level best that you can, even though sometimes people fall on hard times. People do need help. I understand that. But keep in mind, there's manipulative people who take advantage of that, who aren't sincere. And I had a discussion about this actually recently with someone. I won't go into the details about that. And they're good at detecting this, and they, we both concurred. By the way, we can identify these types of things, by the way, and don't be afraid to tell a person no, because there's people who also will prey on people too. But just putting it out there, the only 2 gold coins I had when I had the surgery earlier this year, which I did mention in a previous video, I had to sell those back. But I think it's important, if you do make good money, you have a good paying job, if you are still working even during this pandemic, or you have a good savings, it's a smart, wise decision to invest in hard assets. And if you can't afford more expensive gold coins, they have what they call, through fractionalization, you can have 1/4 coins. Some people buy grams. And I'm talking about physically. You want to hold the physical. I'm not talking about like network marketing, like Carrot Bars or whatever. I mean, I'm not knocking what they're doing. But I had known about years ago from a particular elder, out of many elders that I know, who went over this information with me and privately, which I appreciate. And I did my research. And like I said, to reiterate, for those of y'all who are new out there, they have educational videos on YouTube that will educate you, by the way, who will provide the resources. And I recommend do research into it. Don't take my word for what I'm saying, but it will definitely not hurt. And the price can fluctuate with gold. There's like maybe $100 to $200 premium on top of the market price. So you want to look that up and know what that is. Learn about the premium. Like with precious metals, like if you're buying a silver eagle, I think the premiums went up recently. By the way, it's like you're seeing higher premiums, like $4 or $5. So say if it's trading at $16 an ounce with a silver eagle, which is a 0.99 practically an ounce, or whatever, it's going to be about 20 bucks. You're looking $19 or $20, which is still a steal right now. Still a good deal, even though they're kind of doing us a favor in a way by the prices being artificially suppressed, because a lot of people don't know. A lot of people aren't using their fiat currency. They're not putting it in hard assets. But I recommend that's not the only safe haven for store wealth. You want to also look into digital currencies. I know some people I met don't like digital currencies. I'm familiar with that. I fully understand. But however, down the road, they're not giving us a choice because the fiat, which people have to remember, these Federal Reserve notes that we carry, they also call dirty money. By the way, these fiats, by the way, are not in the near future. It's not going to be worth what it is. You know, the purchasing power it's not what it's at. Now, the reason why the prices have gone down in certain regards because of, you know, this pandemic crisis and other things, like people seeing the price of gas go down. I hear that's dealing with the trade war between Iran and Russia, etc. By the way, is because you have law of supply and demand. So this gets into economics. And I did give a disclaimer earlier, so this is not financial or legal advice, so please do your own research. I encourage you to. But just going over economics, you want to learn about the GDP. You want to go look up nationaldebtclock.org. You want to learn about our fiat. You want to look at the silver and gold section of the nationaldebtclock.org, by the way, since I touched on precious metals, by the way. But look at how the dollar is losing its purchasing power, how generally it years ago it could buy more things versus now. But only recently, due to this pandemic, for certain things you're seeing are cheaper. But in other items that are become scarce, like N95 mask, hand sanitizers, for example, the prices have skyrocketed, which can happen in other areas. But down the road, the people that control our banking system, by the way, they're moving over to a digital currency, by the way. So it's going to be important to not have all your eggs in one basket. By the way, this is basics for people who are involved in investments. They say spread your wealth, diversify. So not only would I recommend gold, silver, copper, even it's important for the people with deep pockets, heavy rollers out there, rhodium, platinum, palladium, maybe, for those of y'all who know how to trade in that regard. But definitely you won't go wrong with gold and silver. And like I said, if you're looking at gold, you have fractionalized pieces like 1/4 ounces, 1/8 ounces, like 1/8 of an ounce. By the way, that will be less than paying the full 1,700. You have to look at the variations. Go to coinflation.com, other sites, Kitco. Look up, start familiarizing yourself with the market. By the way, stay abreast, just like people stay abreast of the prices of cryptocurrencies with Coinbase. By the way, you want to stay abreast of the prices with precious metals, by the way. So hopefully I answered that question for you, Ray. That was a good question. I see gold going up there, sky high, by the way. So best get it while it's cheap, while it's still lower, because some project, like Jim Rickards projects, that gold can go up as high as 10,000 one day, and I can see how that's possible. Even maybe way beyond that one day. I can see how that's possible. It's no problem. If it's already hit 1,800, it's on its way to $2,000 and above. So we're talking 2,000-3,000 an ounce easily. So gold is definitely, you can't go wrong investing in gold, by the way. But I would also fractionalize your pieces, because you need to be able to break them down. By the way, that's another thing I forgot, even with silver. So if you're trading, let's say somebody a loaf of bread, or let's say a portable power station for, might be the equivalent. If I have a gold coin and I want to trade for a Yeti Gold Zero 1400, by the way, that may be an equivalent exchange for bartering purposes. By the way, maybe for some people it might be food, but you want to be able to have a way to break them down. That's why we have denominations like 1s, 5s, 10s, $20 bills, $50 bills, 100s. So keep that in mind. You want to learn how to break your precious metals, silver and gold, down, and look at whatever if you have to barter down the road. By the way, that's something to keep in mind. That's why some people buy what's called constitutional silver, like Kennedy half dollars, Washington quarters that predate 1964 on back, that had 90% silver content, and the Mercury dimes, by the way, going back years ago, Franklin half dollars, by the way, maybe even Morgan silver dollars, or peace dollars. But sometimes you can use those for a trust, by the way, but that gets into a whole nother topic. So let me move on. Dominique Sims says, what do you think about the Vietnamese dong and the rate changing soon because of the currency manipulation? I think, as I mentioned earlier, you can't go wrong with it, as I previously mentioned. I think I've heard allegedly is joined at the hip, just like the dinar and other foreign currencies. By the way, you want to diversify, as I mentioned earlier, your portfolio. In my opinion, I did give a disclaimer. So on a side note, just keep in mind, these are my opinions. This is not financial. This is not securities legal advice. In the event you feel you need that, it is encouraged you seek a competent professional. But just giving my opinion about it, I feel you can't go wrong. Part of diversifying your portfolio. If you looked at the evidence and some things I mentioned prior, there's people, not just myself, others that have receipts to prove validity. Now, scams out there would be if you had people like counterfeiting stuff like that, would be like the scams, what to watch out for. But I'm talking about the legitimate side, which is something separate. So in case gatekeepers are trolls, you want to be able to distinguish between the two sides. By the way, and you have to ask the question, why is some of these gatekeepers or people that claim that that's a scam or that's not real, like they say about the dinars, then you have to ask the question, why are they not mentioning some of this gray area stuff? They're not going in depth about certain things like I am even, but do your own research, homework. I would say, in my opinion, I think, you aren't going to go wrong. You're doing good, in my opinion. Mary Saunders says, yes. Mary Saunders says, I have heard that too, but a lot of it was kept quiet. Okay. Dominic Sims says, how much silver or gold do you recommend buying for the person that has none as of right now? In my opinion, I would say what Pastor Lindsey Williams said some years ago, who was a whistleblower. If you know who he is, you can look him up. He lived with the elite of the world. Came out as a whistleblower activist some years ago. He had been on different interviews. And he's put out DVDs. If you can support him or you have the money, go and purchase his DVDs. If not, there may be free content you can find. Like his video, I recommend, if you can still find it on YouTube, called Secrets of the Elite. I highly recommend checking out his video, by the way. But to answer your question, he said as much gold, much silver you can get your hands on. I would say gold. But at the same time, make sure you budget. In my opinion, your personal resources, what's important. I don't know what your everybody's circumstances, situation is different. This is why I put this in my disclaimer in the beginning. But I would, in my opinion, I don't know what your financial situation is like, but based on your income level, your expenses, what you're willing to spend, if you have loved ones that you care for or whatever, I would, allocate. I would definitely try to allocate a certain amount. If it's this late in the game and you haven't done this at all, I would move ASAP. And Silver Eagles, by the way, are good. Silver rounds, Indian heads, constitute what they call constitutional silver mercury dimes from back in the day, Washington quarters. Go on eBay. You have different coin sites, Ampex, Gainesville coins is good. What are some other ones I can think of out there? It's like ones at the tip of my tongue. I can't think of. Someone just shared with me not too long ago. But they're online. You can look up different sites. But I recommend, I forgot, in person, by the way, because there's also, I forgot to mention, con artists and scam artists out there. So it's encouraged that you don't buy the bars in many cases. Start off with the rounds or dimes, quarters, half dollars, Kennedy half dollars, 1964 on back. That had 90%. Just after that, you can do the research. They started minting less silver content. But you can't go wrong. That'll help break your pieces down, like your 10s, 5s, 20s, and to break down bigger bills, like if you have 50s, 100s. Because if you're in a pandemic or a crisis, if things get worse, like what Canadian Prepper or City Prepper talks about, and then worst case Armageddon, doomsday scenario, and you have to barter precious metals for food or items that you have, then you're going to want to be able to break your currency down. Then I forgot, a friend of mine even reminded me recently, even if you're still holding FRNs, people still bartering, you're gonna want to use be able to have the ability to break those down into smaller denominations And a lot of people don't explain this, but that equivalates to precious metals. You want to be able to break them down into smaller forms. That's in the event you have to barter, or and even selling them back if you don't want to sell back as much. But it will be based on your budget, what your family resources are looking like, by the way. So hopefully I answered that question. Let me know, guys. If you can out there, shoot me a thumbs up if you like what I'm talking about. You're currently joining Dorsey's Resource. This is question and answer on redemption related topics. By the way, this is question and answer. Don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the notification bell. So whenever I put out new videos, new content, YouTube will notify you in the upper right hand section, by the way. So appreciate you guys. I'm going to get ready to shut things down a little bit. I'm going to take these last couple questions right here. This is the last call, by the way. Says, okay, I answered that question. Jeff West Bay says, can you please touch on property tax? By the way, if you can, Jeff, if you're still watching, come back with that question of more thoroughly, what specifically pertaining to property tax, because I can tell you already some questions it's going to be a little bit tougher for me to respond to. Like I say, I will do my level best, but what is it specifically about property tax that you have a question about? Because that gets into, of course, that's for people that like own homes. Each year you have to pay X amount to the county, what area you're living in. By the way, now there is some things related to the redemption studies that gets into advanced level education that I am aware of, by the way, even though I'm not at that level, by the way. But I have shared some of the sources that I had. And one source in particular actually gave me some paperwork some years ago. I still have it, maybe even sitting around my apartment somewhere, by the way. There's some excellent information about that, because this stuff is really deep, what the bankers did to set up to keep people indebted, enslaved, like with the mortgage, with the contracts, and so they could still own the property. And then based on if you live in a city, municipality, you want to, I think I was hearing from another source, you want to move further out because there may not be as much red tape that you have to go through. But however, there is a way, I hear allegedly, to have that stopped. But it may be more difficult if you're in a municipal area, if this is redemption related in the city area, by the way, because based on zoning laws and then the tax assessor's office and the county and stuff and the treasurer, they're tied in. So you got to really know what you're doing. You might have to be having a state you're operating through already. So I wasn't sure how that property tax question, which direction that was kind of going, but maybe I provided some insight. But if you're still watching, come back real quick and you can be a little bit more concise, direct with the question. I'll try to answer. By the way, okay, I see you said thanks, bro. No problem. If you want to also shoot me an email, if so that's kind of like a general question. If I didn't thoroughly help answer, you can hit me at Dorsey's Resource 2017 at gmail.com. This is for serious inquiries only. Dorsey's Resource 2017 at gmail.com, by the way. Kangaroo Jack says, what do you think of Zion Oil? Is it at a good investment? And I'm not familiar, but I would say that sounds like you're advanced, by the way, because I've looked into that. That gets into like the people what's the guy that he's interviewed, trying to think of his name, that guy who's I know his last name I think is Morgan. He was interviewed by the guy who interviews like a lot of financial analysts that are more so awake. But that gets into like I'm familiar with Asset Sprott Management. It's been a while since I looked them up, like Rick Rule, the guys that invest in like oil mining stocks. That's above my level. That's why I said I'm only at a certain level. I'm kind of versatile, but I'm a little bit familiar with but not fully. I say that's probably because oil is something for a while. It's going to be necessary, something that's important. It wouldn't hurt. And now, even while the prices have dropped, I hear that's how sometimes the big wigs or the big guys involved, they make their money in the dips when the prices go low. They say buy low, sell back high. So eventually that's going to probably go back high as things recover. down the road, you know, that's even with precious metals. So I'd say it definitely wouldn't hurt if you're already familiar with it. Mining stocks, oil, they say buy low, but just make sure, as I mentioned to the other person earlier, the question, you have the resources where you don't want to be in a situation where you say you get a flat tire, you get stuck on the road and you don't have money to call AAA or tow truck, by the way, because you just spent your last money for your groceries or whatever. Just make sure you budget your money correctly, in my opinion, so you have enough to allocate for emergency purposes, by the way. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for joining. Jeff West says, I was thinking about discharge and set-offs. Okay, got the question you were referring to earlier in terms of the property tax. Yes, that is possible, by the way. But there's a way, I know I've heard that you can totally have that stopped. Because I'm not at that level yet and still trying to free myself, I don't really have the time to go into the details. But like I said, to reiterate, you can also shoot me an email and maybe I can cover this topic, or we can delve into this more specifically if you want that, if you would like for me to kind of talk about that, because that branches into some in-depth stuff, and I would kind of have to go into my own personal background to kind of explain. But I have heard, I do know some heavy hitters out there, some people behind the scenes who are advanced. And I do know discharges do work. It is real, but there's also things you have to be cautious of as well in doing that. And part of it is status correction you may already be aware of. And there's other things out there, do's and don'ts, by the way. So thank you guys for the questions. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, John Dorsey at Dorsey's Resource. You can follow me at Dorsey's Resource. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter at Dorsey's Resource. Obviously, I'm on YouTube at Dorsey's Resource. I'm also on Minds.com at Dorsey's Resource. I'm also on Instagram at Dorsey's Resource _2019. I want to thank you guys again for joining me. I'm your host, John Dorsey. Don't forget to thumbs my video up and also comment. You're welcome to. And subscribe. If you haven't, hit the notification bell. Until next time, I appreciate you all. Thank you for joining. Take care.